copy over. Jada Frank. Page 24. Later that night, Nate contacted me again. This time, something had got him scared shitless. He said his lights were flickering and the air was freezing inside his bedroom. After watching enough documentaries on paranormal on TV, I knew he probably had a poltergeist or a demon hanging out in his house. So I asked him about the history of his house. Remember, he just moved into his new home after being kicked out of school. It turns out his parents got a great deal on it. The previous owner's son went on a murder rampage and then committed suicide. I did some research and discovered that indeed he was telling the truth. On January 28th, 2004, the previous owner's 16-year-old son, Tyler Purtle, murdered his social worker, Greg Gowell, and the house sitter, Sarah Dahl. He then drove a couple hundred miles and shot himself in the head. This happened when his parents were away on vacation in the Cayman Islands. The news reported that Tyler was having a lot of trouble in school at the time. He was very withdrawn. Some of the students commented he was one of your typical students. He cooperated with teachers and did what he was supposed to do. Later he changed. I never did see him smile, said Hudson Lewis, 17. Tyler Purtle was an all-around star at sports before his mother and father divorced, then he just stopped. Tyler's stepmother worked at this DuPont-owned Pioneer Hybrid, which develops genetically engineered crops for farmers. Sarah Dalk, the house sitter, was also as a part-time employee at Pioneer Hybrid. In addition to that, Nate's stepfather also worked at Pioneer Hybrid. I just want to make it clear the reason so many of these people worked at Pioneer Hybrid is the corporate headquarters was just down the street. I'm not suggesting Pioneer Hybrid was experimenting on the youth in the neighborhood, but I do find it interesting that Nate was connected to this synchronicity. Shows a picture of Tyler Purtle's home, located on 5852 Brentwood Circle, Johnston, Louisiana, I think. A few months after this picture was taken, Nate's family moved into the home. Sarah and Greg. Sarah, 21, Greg, 41, both murdered by Tyler. Greg. Why? Tyler Purtle committed suicide on January 28th, 2004. Page 26. The press releases revealed that Tyler's parents did not get along very well, so the father moved into the basement. I find this interesting because Nate said he could see a portal to hell in his basement. In the occult world, this would usually mean that someone conducted a satanic ritual to open a portal. Just what exactly was the Purtle family up to in the basement? That's someone else's story, as we probably won't ever know. Nate revealed to me that his IQ was off the charts, tested at 168, which occurs in about 1 out of 150,000 people. He said he had a photographic memory and could read 10 pages of a book in 1 minute. That's not me. I can't even read 26 pages in 26 days. He said he had a photographic memory and could read 10 pages of a book in 1 minute. Despite this, he managed only a D+ average in school, and he was horrible at arithmetic. I think it was because he was zoning out so much. He was also quite kinetically gifted. He had a black belt in Kung Fu. His brothers taught him Taekwondo, Jeet Kune Do, Jiu-Jitsu, and he was obsessed with exercise. He told me he exercised hours a day and would drink multiple protein shakes. He was on school wrestling and boxing team. His hit speed was tested at 650 pounds of force. He said he could lift a cement bag with one hand, and his dad could too. And at the time, he was bench pressing about 300 pounds. Nate believed his superhuman strength was due to his oversized adrenal glands. He was into violent sports. During one boxing match, he hit a kid so hard that he was hospitalized with a fractured skull. I asked him, "Why do you get so carried away when attacking your opponents?" Nate answered, "Once someone makes me angry, I lose control. Then my teammates keep cheering me on and I can't stop." Nate also claimed to have telekinetic gifts. He could move objects around using the power of his mind alone. For instance, he could levitate a pencil across a table. He was also able to manipulate energy and matter and proved it to me by making me grow. More about this later. He could see other people's auric fields, which is basically energy radiated by your body's bioelectric field. For me, he said, my aura was green and gold. His aura was red, green, white, and black on the outside. When I asked him what this means, he said people who are crazy have a red color. White means you're an angel, and gold colors are really good Christians. He was also clairvoyant and told me that in the future there would be a civil war in America, that he would bomb a microchip factory. But they would capture him and blind him before he could escape. Eventually he would die an angry, bitter man at the hands of an assassin. But he refused to tell me who that assassin was. This seems to confirm what John Titor reported would occur in the future. According to him, he time traveled back in time from the year 2028 to the year 2000 and talked about how America will fall into civil war due to a corrupt government. He claimed it would begin around fall 2008 or after the collapse of the dollar, after which Congress is suspended. In 2012, the president declares himself president for life. By 2015, 4 million Americans died from civil war. Then in March 2015, a nuclear holocaust devastates the planet, killing 150 million Americans and 4 billion people worldwide. In 2020, a new Continental Congress convenes, and the Constitution is rewritten to fix the mess from the previous American Federal Empire. This nightmarish scenario was a possible outcome on the timeline back in 2004, but has since been averted. We will not be having martial law, civil war, or nuclear war on this timeline. Now back to the story. I was concerned that his abilities may be the result of demon possession. He attended church regularly, but he was also having underage sex multiple times a day, regularly with various girlfriends. You would think that so much sex would wear him out, but I guess not, as he would joke about having a pack of 100 condoms under his bed, and only one was left. He told me a funny story about his one girlfriend. She was 24 and about to graduate from college, but she didn't know that Nate was actually 15, because Nate was a minor and she was an adult. She could have been arrested for molesting a child. It turns out this girlfriend accepting a teaching position at his high school for the preceding school year. So he wanted my advice how to dump her before she found out how old he was. I told him to make up a story, so when he told her his real age, she slapped him and then went into a panic when she realized she just had sex with a minor. I don't remember what happened after that. Nathan never talked about her again. Page 28. The reason why Nate could get away with dating older women was because he would look so mature for his age. When he was 16, he was already very tall, and his muscles were huge from working out all the time. Nate had 2 older brothers, and not surprisingly, they were also sex addicts like himself. So I asked him if he thought this problem could be caused by demon possession, and that's when Nate told me he conducted an exorcism on his older brother Adam. During this ritual, his brother began levitating and yelling obscenities, but sadly Nate was unable to help him. Since we were on the topic of angels and demons, I told him about my experience with the angel hovering over my bed. And that's when Nate told me about something that happened during a party at his friend's house. He was drinking heavily when he passed out. Lucifer appeared to him. Nate described his appearance as extremely ugly, with a huge dick, and when Lucifer talked to him, it burned him inside. His aura was gold surrounded by black. Lucifer told Nate that he hates everyone because God can forgive them for their sins and go to heaven, but he can't. He hates being condemned to hell and wants to take everyone down with him. At that point, Nate blacked out, began having a seizure, and his friends rushed him to the hospital. When Nate finished telling this story, he hears a dog howling outside his window, a black cloud in his room, and the air starts to smell like sulfur. Of course, now he's totally freaked out and plays his Christian music as loud as he can. But it doesn't seem to stop his black cloud, which is now next to him in his bedroom. So I had to repeat the following phrase to the entity. In the name of Jesus, you have no control over me any longer. Leave me alone and never come back. At that point, according to Nate, the black cloud entered into his computer and typed onto my screen, "Who the fuck is this?" Afraid to give it my real name, I gave it my instant messenger nickname. I said, Bearish. I replied, "Who the fuck is Bearish?" I said, "Leave him alone. You have no authority over him anymore." It answered back, "Fuck you." Then it left the room. Now we were both freaked out at this point. I thought perhaps a dark entity had come out of the portal in the basement. So Nate, I kept talking late into the night until both of us calmed down enough to go to sleep. During this time, Nate informed me this kind of stuff was normal for him, but I intended to bring it to an end. The very next day, I went to the library to do some research on demon possession, in the hopes I could help Nate kick some demon butt. According to my research, signs of demon possession include heart attacks, overactive adrenals, supernatural strength, levitation. Signs of demon possession include heart attacks, overactive adrenals, a supernatural strength, and levitation. Oh, more. Unholy rage. Great. Oh, fuck. Sexual addiction, suicidal behaviors, dabbling in Satanism. Yeah, no thank you. After going through that list, it was like, what the fuck? That describes Nathan and his dad perfectly. Remember his dad died from a heart attack due to rage, probably from overactive adrenal glands. Nate told me he also had the same problem. Going a little deeper into the books, I read that if you don't intervene and stop the dark spirit from working itself into the spine, eventually a person will become totally possessed and will ultimately die from its own negativity. So the next step was to do an exorcism. Since no one taught me how to do one before, I followed the directions. I got those from those library books. The first step was to fast for 2 days, which I did, but I never told Nate that. I was now ready to do the ritual, but since I never met in person, I figured I would just have him talk to a professional pastor who claimed to perform exorcisms over the internet. The pastor asked Nate if he ever dabbled in black magic. When Nate was younger, he casted spells but gave it up a long time ago. When he asked for the name of the spirit in his book of shadows, Nate answered, Wolf. The conversation abruptly ended and Nate logged out of the chat room. "James, why did you leave?" "Nate, that dude scares me." "James, why?" "I don't know." Something was seriously wrong, and what the heck was a book of shadows, and why would Nate have one? And why was he scared of a simple question like that? Sadly, I don't know what else to do. I never did ask him about his book of shadows. It just seemed like something he didn't want to talk about anymore. Just for fun, I would sometimes tease him. One time Nate misspelled some words in his chat box, and I jokingly said, "Dude, you were taking in ancient words." In his chat box, I jokingly said, "Dude, you were taking in ancient Vishainess." It was a race of people in the Indian subcontinent that were destroyed in a nuclear holocaust during the time of Atlantis. Nate replied, "Oh my God, what?" I answered, "It was just a joke. Did you really think I was serious?" Nate answered, "I've talked in Latin before. One time I fell asleep in class. When I woke up, I was screaming something in Latin. What happened next? I went into a seizure and passed out." His stories were weird, and yes, I believed them. Even they weren't true. Nate believed they were, and that's all that really mattered. After all, it's not my place. It's not my place to judge. My job as a friend was to figure out what I could do to help him and maybe put a stop to all negative things going on in his life. I just had to get to the bottom of this. I knew there was something more than a possible demon possession going on in Nate's life. At this point, I became obsessed with studying the paranormal, the very thing in my religious backgrounds forbids me to do. Nate taught me about psychic abilities and helped me realize that we all have a natural gift as long as we don't suppress it. I studied aliens and UFOs for the first time since I was a kid.